What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one, breakdown what's going on with NIO stock as the stock is going absolutely berserk and continuing to climb to the upside. I break down some very important news that just came out involving the market and why NIO is getting all this attention, what you should be watching for going into next week, and why NIO is exploding the way it is. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, so check it out in just about 5 days as it's about to end. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, looking at NIO. This thing is up 11% at the time I'm recording this. I'm recording this very close to the market close, and it's holding up very, very nicely, very strongly, getting this very, very bullish looking break. So before I talk about the share price of NIO and talk about why on earth this thing is pumping so hard, let's first talk about the market for next week very quickly. Just as a reminder, we have SoFi's earnings for next Monday, or the Monday that's coming up. We have AMD and Uber for Tuesday. We have CVS, PayPal, and Shopify for Wednesday. And for Thursday, we have Amazon, Apple, and Coinbase. Once again, that's going to be very important for the whole market, and I think it's going to be very exciting. Now, to add on to this, we do have some data dropping, but nothing too significant. And right now, the news is talking about how NIO is a great company. Why we're going to see lots of volatility for it. It's actually making some headlines for the Nasdaq right now. This article is talking about how NIO is the best Chinese stock, EV stock to buy like right now. That is once again a nice question to ask, and I think if anything, it's a great stock to buy, and it's doing very, very well. Not financial advice, by the way. But when it comes to NIO, you can see right over here, China is once again supporting the mission of NIO by putting a lot more exposure, and it's really helping out a lot of these EV companies. And on top of that, we're continuing to see them improving in their financial performances. To add on to this, there's been a lot of talk about how it's getting lots of buy ratings from big analysts. It has a very, pretty good balance sheet as they're holding a good amount of cash and they're continuing to grow. And now this article is talking about, I think like down here is talking more about its valuation as we're starting to see a very, very forward-looking price to sales ratio that's improving. And they're continuing to see more and more upgrades as analysts are calling it a buy right over here. Wall Street analysts are saying it's a moderate buy, which is a good sign for it. And we're also going to be looking at what happens during the latest deliveries report, which is going to be a big determiner of what ends up happening. Now, the thing I want to remind everyone about is how out of all analysts, none of them have said to sell NIO. This is according to bar charts. 4 said it's a strong buy, 1 said that it's moderate, and 5 said to hold on to them. That's once again still some good news. That's after Morgan Stanley said that NIO is going to likely outperform the market or continue to do so. Now, to add on to this, I just wanted to mention that we're continuing to get good news because NIO has the deliveries report that's coming out, and I'm going to make another video about this and talk about my prediction for it tomorrow. But for now, I just want to talk about other things. The volume was 98 million, well above average, once again breaking lots of expectations, and it's continuing to break to the upside as we're seeing the price price ratio go to the moon, which means NIO is outperforming SPY and the QQQ. So now let's break down these numbers. Let's talk about how NIO is looking. NIO is currently at $14.74 at the time I'm recording this, holding up very nicely and respecting a very strong uptrend. But here's one of the things to remember, and one of the things that's worth mentioning for the stock. When you look at this from a technical standpoint, NIO is continuing to hold up very, very nicely. Now, let me actually hide my drawings and use the weekly chart for this part. I think the daily or the weekly could work. Actually, I'm going to use the daily chart instead. We're going to close our view up as well. Going back, let me show you something. Here are some very important levels on NIO to really look out for. First off, we had this gap that was all the way like up here that NIO filled, and it started to push this next resistance level, which is actually very close to this. Actually, we didn't fully fill the gap yet. We're getting very close to doing so. It's like at $15. So we're getting very close to fill the gap near 15 and a break above that. So we're going to be watching this previous support, which is now going to become our resistance at this 15.25 area. If that breaks, there's 16 as the next level. And above 16, we have 16.8 potentially coming. And if it keeps going, I'm going to be watching $22.74 for NIO. That is right. This thing could continue to explode. Why is that? Because they could be giving us a new record for deliveries. I will talk more specifically about the numbers a little bit later, but I want to talk more about technicals for today. Now, one thing that you could mention is that NIO is kind of overbought, so could it cool off a little bit and then continue going? Yes, but I don't think the high is in yet. I think it has a lot more room for upside. I think the chart looks very hot, and I think that NIO is going to try to continue going forward. Now, if you look at Tesla, it's also trying to hold up, fighting right about at this 266 resistance. If it breaks 275, it's going to likely try to push up to fill this gap, but we need some confirmation for us to turn really bullish. And if it breaks below, 255, if it breaks below that, there's 253, and below that, 250. Any break below 250, and this thing's going to come tanking to the 240 area to 243. So we're going to be watching for confirmation. So far, it's holding up quite nicely. For SPY, we're going to be watching if we could get a bounce going into next week as we have Apple's earnings. That's going to be very telling, so make sure you're ready for that. For now, we're just going to be watching to see how it performs at these levels. It's currently testing this 457 resistance, and we are getting closer to the close, so it's just worth noting. Anyways, NIO is still, holding up very much better than the majority of stocks out there. Even yesterday when the market cooled off, we saw NIO continue to hold up, and NIO is continuing to look very, very strong. I think it's going to possibly cool off a little bit. It may gap down one of these days, then start continuing to pump depending on news that comes out. But I do believe that it's going to push all the way up to at least 15.5 by the time we get to deliveries. And I think when it comes to deliveries, this could shoot NIO stock even higher into the 16 to 17s. If not, it could, slow it down. It really depends on the numbers. I do anticipate they're going to be quite good, and I'm very, very excited for this big event. Now, another thing I want to mention about NIO is that looking at the seasonality data, historically, okay, NIO tends to be very strong in January, tends to be kind of weak in February, kind of like 50-50, weak in March, and strong for April and May, a little weak in June, then strong for July, and, the other months. But if you look at this year, okay, look at the year, you will notice that NIO was actually underperforming all year long. There was only one exception, like during the month of January, it did pop a little bit, but since then it's just been on a big downtrend. So what happened was it was in this falling wedge formation. It was continuing to fall and fall and fall and get hit after hit after hit. And I'm calling this out because it really underperformed all these months. All these months it did not do well, and now the stock is ready for making a comeback. It's kind of like a balance. You know how like if you have something that's very buoyant that's trying to float in the water and you just tug it down and down and down in the water, it's going to have a very, very strong upwards force to push it up. So, for example, like a sponge that floats or even like a rubber ducky, these things like to float to the upside. They like to balance their way back up. It's just like for NIO. It was getting slingshotted down and down and down. You're pulling back the rubber band, but now it's going right back in the opposite direction. I also want to mention that for many months, I was warning you guys about this. I was telling you, when you look at NIO, yeah, it's selling off, but this thing is going to break out eventually. Once we get those improvements, once we start to get strong deliveries, and what's happening? It's just getting started. And I think there's so much more upside to come. Okay? So that's what I'm seeing for NIO. Uh, I've been remaining bullish on NIO since this thing was at $7. I was calling it out. And it's been many weeks since I've called NIO out, and it's been continuing to pump. I think it has more room to go. Very strong looking weekly candle. Looks very, very good, and I can't wait for next week. It's going to be very, very fun. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Remain calm, cool, and collected. Do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys in the next one. NIO to the moon is long term is still very bright, and peace out.